So it is now time to start the meeting. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all. We didn't know how many people we'd have to the meeting. We've got nearly 20 people on this call, so that suggests that we will be able to form a group in Taunton, which was really the purpose of calling this meeting. So that's very encouraging. Just looking around the people we've got on the call, actually we're just about small enough, and it's such an interesting group that it might be really useful if we all quickly introduce ourselves. I say quickly, 60 seconds slot. Let me try and do it by example. My name's Peter Travis. I'm co-chair of the Somerset Bus Partnership, which is organising this meeting. And I'm also the coordinator of a bus user group in Frome. I think most of you know David Dredgewell, but I'll hand over to David to introduce himself. David.
He's on mute.
He is as well. I can't believe it.
Sorry, yeah, David Dredgewell. I work across the southwest on public transport campaigning, and my speciality, because I'm disabled, is accessibility and equalities within public transport.
Thank you. And David is a real expert and helps us with a lot of information. Moving on, let's go to Sue.
Sue Stevens, is it?
Sue Stevens, that's the one and only.
Hello, everyone. I'm from Wiveliscombe. Been interested in bus issues since I moved here about 4 years ago. And I'm quite interested in trying to get the bus station reopened in Taunton. I think it's quite essential to increase bus service usage. Okay.
Thanks, Sue. And Barry, also from Wiveliscombe, I think.
Yeah, I've been the Town Council's delegate to the Somerset Bus Partnership, and very interested in setting up a local group as well. You kindly put me in touch with somebody newly interested, and I've been I've spoken to them. They couldn't make it tonight, but very interested in putting together a 25 route group for Wiveliscombe and Milverton and places like that.
Thank you. Jo.
Hi, I'm Jo, and I'm totally new to all this. No idea what is happening, but I agree that we need a bus station in Taunton. It is absolutely appalling that we don't have one, but our buses out here are so far and few between. I gave up using them a long time ago because of that. But it's horrendous. It really is. But I'm just a parish councillor around here. So I used to go into town. I used to work in town, and I used to get the bus into work and home from work. I couldn't do that now. So
thanks, Jo. That's great. Councillor Dave Mansell. You're on mute at the moment, Dave.
Yes. Hi. It's nice to see you and other people here. And I note actually I'm not the only councillor on the call. I live in Wiveliscombe too. I'm a district and a county councillor representing Wiveliscombe district and Upper Tone. I was encouraged to come along and hear what's said at the meeting today. Since the June timetable changes, there have been a few issues with Route 25, and have been able to address some of those. So there have been some improvements, but there were some problems emerged at the beginning of June.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you. John Ainsworth.
Yeah, I'm from Wellington. I've sort of got involved with the bus partnership in the last few weeks, and had quite a useful meeting with the Environment and Open Spaces Committee of Wellington Town Council the other day. who are certainly willing to endorse the bus manifesto, and hopefully can manage to do a few things with us in terms of pushing for better buses from Wellington. Wellington's not too bad in that we've still got a 15-minute service into Taunton during the day, but one of the ongoing problems is none of the buses go direct to the hospital or to the railway station, and I think that's something certainly that we want to push for.
Thanks. Charles Henderson.
I live out at North Curry, Grandage, near St Giles Kennels, and we've been here 6 years. When we came, there was a half-hourly bus service into Taunton from the bottom of our field, one from Wells and one from Yeovil. Within about 18 months, that had shrunk to one service every 1.5 hours, as part of the cuts that Somerset County Council made to the bus support grant system.
Thank
In
you.
the last 6 months, we've had a restoration of 5 services a day. So we now have an hourly service from Yeovil to Taunton going through this area. But a very considerable hardship has been caused to people living even further east in Fivehead and Langport and even Somerton, getting to Musgrove Park Hospital by public transport is the best part of a day's work.
Yeah.
It really is quite tough. And the difficulty of the 1.5 hour service is that you had so little time in Taunton to do anything, or you could be sitting around twiddling your thumbs. North Curry Parish Council isn't in the least bit interested in this issue.
Okay, all right. Actually, most parish councils are, but I'll note that we've got a job of work to do on North Curry. Susan. Susan.
Yes.
Hi, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm in Coxford, and I've had when we've only been in it 5 years, and the bus service has gone now from 1 hourly to 2 hourly, and we aren't that far away from Taunton.
Okay, thank you, Susan.
We did have a small group at one time where people were trying to get things done, but nothing has happened.
Okay. Well, hopefully a bus user group might be able to help. David Northey, who I spoke to this afternoon. I said I look forward to seeing you on Zoom, and now I am.
Good afternoon. Yeah, so my name's David Northey. I've been a Taunton resident for 60 years, just coming up now. So I know the area intimately, grown up in Bishop's Lydeard, travelled to school. I just made a little note that the bus fare was 6 old pennies for me when having to travel to school to Taunton, and I probably still got the tickets somewhere. So I've had an interest in buses from an early age, although railways are the biggest thing for me. And then, as David Reddrail will know, I was the strategic planner for Network Rail for the last 8 or 9 years, just retired, but very interested in integrating the whole range of public transport so that we provide through connectivity, and having a focal point somewhere in Taunton where buses and trains can all interchange, so that journeys like from the hospital to Priorswood can be made, from the college to the station to link to go to Bridgewater College, for instance. All these sorts of journeys are really quite possible. They just need thinking about joining up. So I'm really interested in that sort of the whole first, last mile and integration, and making it sustainable so that we don't have more bus cuts, so that we get new people to use the buses. People that don't currently use buses today, we need to get them transferred from their car or whatever. Majority of journeys in Taunton are probably less than 1.5 miles. And a lot of those are made by car, so we could be making this far better for all of us in Taunton, really. So
thank you, David. Thank you very much. Ian, you're muted at the moment.
Okay, Ian Aldridge. First time I've had any meeting, attended any meeting of the bus partnership. I'm an outgoing district councillor with Somerset West in Taunton. and also a parish councillor, though not representing Williton Parish Council on this meeting. My interest is often more strategic, but I must admit that there is a degree of complacency because I live within 1 minute's walk of the number 28 route in West Somerset, which makes me very lucky because it is the only bus route of note in West Somerset. And it's to a degree understandable why we are reduced to this one service, which basically runs to and from Minehead to Taunton. And I would like to see the kind of things that have just been spoken about, much more integration between the various forms of public transport. I mean, I'm in a position, I've just booked tickets yesterday to go to a place in Germany, nearish Hanover, by rail. And I can't see a better way of actually getting there. So I actually do use public transport, but the problem I'll face is that when I come back, I won't be able to get a bus that will connect with the train to get me home that night. So you therefore have to use the car to go up to Taunton, even though there is a bus service, as I say, a minute from my front door, which actually goes to the railway station. So it's a bitter irony that I have still got to take my car up to Taunton, and the cost of parking it starts to become a major factor in the total cost of the journey all the way to Germany. So a lot of things I want to see sorted.
Thank you.
And
Thank
we'll
you very
help
much.
do so.
Like to welcome John. John Hassel is one of our co-chairs of the Somerset Bus Partnership. John, you joined fairly late. We're just going around very briefly introducing ourselves. So go ahead, and for those who don't know you, I think probably a lot of them do, but John, a couple of minutes or a minute on you, please.
Right, I'm, as Peter said, one of the 4 co-chairs, and we've been invited to join the board of the bus advisory group by the Somerset County Council. I'm also a local councillor representing Copford and Oak, and have been involved with the Bus Users UK for a few years, in conjunction with Rail Future. So buses and trains are my forte, if you like.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much. Mike Ginger.
Oh, thanks, Peter. I think we probably had a few email correspondence, so I sort of just try to explain. I'm mainly involved in cycle campaigning, Taunton area cycling campaign, but I'm also involved in Transition Town as well. But I have really big concerns about the sort of diminishing bus network and level of service in Somerset. And I'm quite interested in the potential for cycle and bus interchange. Anne's on the meeting as well, Elliot Day. And Anne and Anne's involved in, she'll tell you, Wellington Transition Town. And we did a joint project because there was a major sort of gap in bus information. So although first produced their sort of timetable, there was no kind of coordinated map showing all the services from the different operators together. And I found this quite ironical because I go into the visitor centre in Taunton and I go to pick up a Devon map with all the routes on it, but there was never anything on Somerset. So Anne and I worked together on this, and we did put together a sort of composite map for Wellington and Taunton. So I'm more of an occasional bus user, and I do sort of combine it with cycling sometimes. But I'm very keen to see better choice on sustainable transport options, and obviously the bus is an important part of that. I don't think I'll be able to commit myself to being part of a core group, but I did think it was worth making links, you know, between Transition Town and Taunton area cycling campaign and the work that's going on through the bus partnership.
Thanks. Anne, is that Anne or Annie? I'm not sure.
Yeah, sorry, it's just that my name's Anne. So
Anne,
I don't think I can add very much to what Mike has said really, and also John Ainsworth, who probably is the reason why I've recently become involved again in this area, having sort of moved away from it. I'm particularly concerned though, really, with not just, I mean, the links with rail stations and interconnectivity has been mentioned, but just the kind of really irritating things if you do try to use the bus. And I'll give just a quick example. I was waiting in Taunton, Castleway, for a bus, wasn't sure the times, went to look at the timetable. All the timetables had fallen down inside the display board and were impossible to read. And it's just things like that. You just think, come on, you know, it's in the interest of the bus company to sort things like that out. So yeah, I think most people have said most of the points, so I won't say anything more.
Okay, bus timetables, bus information is one of my pet hobbies, and I'm sure we'll talk. Well, I know we're going to talk about that later on, but it's a point well made. Dee Charles.
Hello, hi everybody. I'm representing Norton Fitzwarren Parish Council. It's very strange that you say parish councils are not very interested in transport, but as a parish council, I can say that we are. I'm very keen to preserve what we've got because we are slowly being eroded in terms of the bus services. I did the recent survey about, with emphasis, of course, on the bus services, and found one question very interesting about supporting Taunton and its town centre and making it vibrant again, which is very difficult when you have to leave the town centre at 5:45 in the evening. So, you know, it's small things, as Anne was saying, but they all mount up, and, you know, we're really keen to keep the services we have. It's good to see we have a double decker on the Norton Fitzwarren service, because many a time I've been left standing at a bus stop in town because the students were all on the bus, not their fault. It's the one before that normally served them just didn't arrive.
Yeah.
Probably due to a lack of drivers. I understand there are many, many reasons why these things are happening at the moment, but when we get back to some kind of normality, whatever that is, I really do not want to see any more of our services eroded in the area. I would like to see, on a positive note, possibly the 28, as it used to, I believe, a while ago, actually running a service through Norton Fitzwarren and Cotford St Luke. To me, that would be a very interesting thing to introduce. But
thank you, Dee. Thank you very much. Susanna Clements, you're muted at the moment.
Hi, yeah, I'm an interloper from Glastonbury.
You're always welcome, anybody from Glastonbury.
Thank you. So I came to learn, you know, what to see what you're learning here and to use it. I used to live here, used to live in Mere, lived before in Bristol actually, and then in Mere, and the buses weren't great then, and then moved to Penzance for 19 years, and from most people, there's a really good rail service from the middle of Penzance. So I was able to give up the car while living in a village just outside Penzance, because I could cycle to the station, put my bike on a train, get to the other end, cycle the other end, and so moved back to Somerset. And I'm really shocked. The traffic was bad when I moved away, but it's really shocking now. And still, to keep banging on, you can't get to Castle Carey on the bus from Glastonbury, which we never used to be able to when I was here before, and it used to drive me nuts, and you still can't. And you can't put bicycles on buses, and you just sort of stuck. So I've still got a car now, which I use occasionally, and my husband's got a car, and we drive to Castle Carey, and I just think this is crazy. Why do we do this?
Bus links to Castle Carey is an issue in much of Somerset. Many of the villages and towns raise that with us. Thank you. Dawn Johnson, are you with us?
Sorry, I'm getting there. Yes. Hi.
Hello.
So I attended many of these meetings through the year. I am a SWT district councillor and a new unitary councillor for Comey Trow and Troll. Joe and I worked on Troll Parish Council, but I've now stepped off that because I'm rather busy. I'm kind of here more though as somebody who is dependent on buses. I am registered blind, and so I can no longer drive. And so buses are my source of transport, other than lifts, the help from lifts. As it stands in Staplehey, I'm 3 miles out of the centre of Taunton, and I cannot go out in the evening, and I cannot go anywhere on a Sunday. End of. You know, without asking for help, I cannot go anywhere. So I can't go and do any sport in the evening. I couldn't go to a leisure centre. I couldn't go out to the theatre. I do not have access to so many of the normal social activities that keep people well, and we need to encourage. You know, there's so many issues here, and fundamentally for me it comes down to money. I know, I think we only got 7% of the money's asked for, which is just, the government have got to put more money behind this. There was such good lot of work done to put in the application, and they gave us 7% of the monies, which is nowhere near what's required. So, unfortunately, there are limitations to what can be done. And that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be worked on, because, we've got the climate emergency. We need to get people out of cars, and we need to get youngsters active, walking, cycling. So, I am quite passionate about it for all sorts of reasons.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you very much. And last but by no means least, and it's great to see you here, Mike. Thank you very much, is Mike Rigby. I'll let Mike introduce himself, so I think probably is known to nearly everyone on the call, but it's great that you joined us, Mike.
No problem. Thank you very much, Peter, and I'm glad to be here. My name is Mike Rigby. I'm the portfolio holder for planning and transport. Sorry, for yes, it is planning and transport. Get it right, at Somerset West and Taunton Council, and for transport and digital at Somerset County Council. So the buck stops with me transport-wise in the greater Somerset West and Taunton. We've obviously got some significant challenges with regard to bus services. Just as we were being elected and taking control of Somerset County Council, the May bus cuts were hitting that we could do nothing about. It's fair to say that there's more to come. So the government will be handing over its last tranche of COVID-based funding for bus services in October, and has said to the bus operators, you need to reset your bus services based on current patronage, and that's something in the region of 70%-ish of pre-COVID levels. So the picture is not rosy, and what's incredibly frustrating is that all of the policy, national policy, local policy, is all geared, environmental policy, all geared to trying to get more people to use public transport, and all the time it's being eroded. We have a, not inconsiderable budget for bus support of £4.7 million a year, but I think that's going to be, we're going to have to look at how we can increase that. We've got almost certainly some cuts to come now. Regrettably, I think the Wells, the 173 service from Wells to Bath has been trailed as possibly being cut. And the difficulty with that having been trailed in the way that it was is that it makes it less likely that bus companies will have those informal conversations with the transport authorities before submitting their proposals. It didn't come from us, so I'm hoping that our relationship with the bus operators is not damaged by that. But there's an example. So on a route like that, it's important to remember, for those of you who don't know, many of you will, but some of you might not know, that the council doesn't provide commercial bus services. What we do is provide non-commercial bus services, so things that private operators aren't prepared to operate because they're not viable. That's when we get involved. And the difficulty we would have with the 173 from Wells to Bath is that part of that route from Midsummer Norton to Bath is a commercial service, so we're not allowed to run that. So we can't run the 173 because it's a through service from Wells to Bath. What we might be able to do as a council is tender for the stretch that goes from Wells to Midsummer Norton. Now, that'll annoy people because they can't stay on one bus all the way to Bath, but that's the law. We're not allowed to run a service all the way there. But just to give you an indication, that might cost something in the region of £100,000. That, you know, we don't have in the budget, and we'll need to go and get that. So there's a debate to be had within the council about what do the cuts look like when they come, and they will come. You know, there's just to be clear, the way it works is the bus operators apply to change or to drop a registration of a service to the traffic commissioner. The traffic commissioner can't really do much about that. It's a bit of a formality. We get consulted and we don't have any grounds to object. So the only way really we can do anything is to then pick up the bits that get dropped and run them ourselves through our own tenders, and that's certainly possible. So we need, as those cuts become clear, to be ready. And I've had a long conversation, a 2-hour conversation with our bus people today about this very issue. We need to be ready to step in and cost up replacements for those services, because like you, I don't want to see the services reduced. I want more bus services, but you know, the way that councils are funded is entirely controlled by government. You know, we used to have something like 2/3 of council funding came from central government. The rest came from locally raised fees and charges, principally council tax, but also things like car parking. The government element of that, the 2/3 bit's completely gone. Revenue support grant, utterly gone now. So councils exist based on capital grants and on what they can raise locally. And you'll all know that we're not allowed to raise council tax without a referendum, which frankly in these circumstances would stand zero chance of being approved. We're not allowed to raise council tax by more than 1.99%, plus supplementaries for things like adult social care. So, you know, the picture is difficult. And we've also been bequeathed by the previous administration a £40 million black hole in next year's budget. So having said all of that, you know, just to set the scene, I've asked our officers to plan to cost up the replacement services for those that end up not being provided by the bus operators anymore, with a view to seeing if we can get the funding to keep them going. So it's not a brilliant picture, to be honest, but at least I'm hoping that we won't be in a position where we're substantially worse off in terms of services by the end of the year. But without intervention, that's very much where we are.
Mike, that's really helpful. I'm sure, well, I see John Hassel would like to comment. John.
Yes, I'm concerned about the fact that we have two large communities, Norton Fitzwarren, as Anne was it mentioned, and Copford. Between them, both growing, I should imagine there'll be about 10,000 population without a bus on a Sunday. Now, the 28, if you're talking about getting people to work in Taunton on Sunday and people to go shopping, the first bus is too darn late. No use running from 9:30 from Minehead. It needs to be at least an hour earlier than that to be able to get people to work on time. And as a result, people are not taking jobs in Taunton because they can't get to work. The younger generation nowadays, if they're lucky and dad pays for a lot of things, they might pass the driving test and get an old banger. But we're trying to dissuade old bangers and have electric cars. So it's a two-edged sword, isn't it? But is there any possibility that the 28 can run through Copford and Norton Fitzwarren on its way into Taunton on Sundays alone, if you like? There's also a bus that runs from Bishop's Lydeard into town, a 23, which runs 3 times a day in each direction. It goes on to Williton in some cases, but I noticed there are 4 other buses on that route, which it just says R against the stop, which means request. how many people in Bishop's Lydeard, for instance, know that that bus runs through Bishop's Lydeard at these times? Because there's no time shown. It just says, oh, a request. So they need to get their timetable up to date. And the 25 in Copford the other week, I noticed that there was a bus going through at 11:55 into Taunton. I looked at the timetable there and it was the 11:03 that came through there then. So I queried this with the driver. She got out of the bus and walked over and looked at the timetable. Oh yes, she said, that's 21st of August 21. Subsequently, she went back to the depot, passed the message on, and they sent a timetable to the parish clerk for Copford, and she's put in the timetable. So if you speak to people, drivers and other officers of the company, you might find you'll get results as well as doing it yourself, as some people across Somerset have done.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things we urge bus user groups to do, is to check, and also parish councils to do, is to check what's up on the bus stops. Hopefully there is a timetable, but even worse than having a timetable up is, as John's just mentioned, is an out-of-date timetable. I mean, that there is nothing more likely to put somebody off going on a bus than them seeing a timetable up there, which doesn't, of course, have an end date. So they assume it's going to be a correct and up-to-date timetable, and they wait and no bus comes. That's the worst possible advertisement for buses. And so it's a really important job, really important job. It might not sound the most exciting job. Really important job is to make sure on any bus stops in your parish or in your locality have got current and up-to-date timetables. Really do urge that. Ian, you've had your hand up.
Okay, well, you learn something new every day. I had no idea living in Willitson, number 23 came here. I've just checked the timetable and John is absolutely right. When it comes to the 28, please can I make a plea? Don't please make it go around any more houses in order to get into Taunton. At the moment, it is scheduled to take 1 hour and 23 minutes to get from one end of its route to the other. And if you want people to use the bus to do things like go to work, we need the opposite. We need faster buses. I've suggested that there could be a 28B or whatever you want to call it that went just from Watchet to Taunton during commuter times, and obviously doing the reverse thing. And similarly, a bus from Minehead, limited stop, get us up there and avoid everything at that end. The problem is you wait at the bus at the railway station for the number 28 and you can find it goes straight by because it's already full. And yet local people are getting out at Staple Grove. And it means that people that really need the 28 can't get on it. I've had that happen to me on 2 occasions. So it's very frustrating. So please, the plea is we need not buses diverted, but surely if you've got 10,000 population and it quite rightly needs a bus service, that population, please can we have an extra bus route? Yeah, you can call it the 28 something if you want to, but let's have a new bus route there which services those people's needs to get into Taunton. That would be my plea. Otherwise, you're going to get more people from Copford St Luke getting on the bus and probably less people getting on the bus from Minehead. So, you know, there we go.
It's always an issue whether you have express services or services which go through all the villages. I happen to live in a village which is off the main road, and I know people in Frome get very frustrated when the few buses that divert through our village do divert because it adds an extra few minutes to their journey. But for our village, that diversion is very important. Dave Mansell.
Just thought I'd quickly mention the timetables. Definitely an issue since the June changes. They weren't updated, and it took more than a month before the website for the 25 service was correct. Which I chased up. I'm told there was technical difficulties which prevented it being swapped over. It has now been done and is finally correct. I also chased on the timetables at the bus stops because they weren't done either, as John has pointed out. I'm told they were done last week, all along the 25 route, but there was two they couldn't access at Cotford St Luke, and so as John said, they were going to send to the parish council to get those sorted, but the 25 timetable should now be updated.
Right. I'm sure Mike Rigby will say this, but just to say that Somerset now has a really reliable journey planner website, which isn't only on buses, it covers all forms of transport. And I think the problem with it at the moment is not enough people know about it. In fact, probably very few people know about it. Its search engine optimization is very poor. It needs to be improved. But actually, as a system for getting accurate, up-to-date information, it's more dependable than many of the bus operators' websites are. And the bus operators do have a habit of leaving online timetables which are out of date, just like they leave bus timetables at bus stops which are out of date. There are many good things about bus operators. They're faced with huge challenges. The one thing they're really poor at is the marketing of their product and the way they look after providing information to their customers. Mike, you've had your hand up. I fear this could be a meeting where you're answering a lot of questions. Normally it's a meeting where I take you through a lot of slides, but actually I think the discussion is more important than my slides. Mike, over to you.
Thank you. Just to pick up on a few of the things that have been mentioned, we could certainly look at diverting some of the 28. Some of you obviously wouldn't want to divert all of them, or you cut off the Conquest Riding Centre for the Disabled, you cut off Norton Manor Camp, for example, and these are important stops. So, but it may be that, that at certain times there could be alternating services. But I do appreciate the point that Ian Aldridge has just made about making journeys even longer and that becoming unattractive. And as part of that, we've clocked that with the 28 route, which is a long service. And are working on putting on a 28 Express in the morning. The difficulty we have at the moment is that teenagers from West Somerset can't get to Richard Hewish, for example, at a sensible time because the bus stops at every stop. So there's a thought that we may try and put on a service that enables. It may even start in Porlock, so that you can pick up teenagers from that area and run that service all the way into Richard Hewish, but where it only stops at kind of every fifth bus stop. And that's not just a mathematical thing, you know, we'll pick the most sensible ones for it to stop at, but it won't stop at every bus stop to try and speed that service up. So that's under consideration at the moment, and I think quite likely to happen. I think parish councils are going to have to be very much, or continue to be very much, part of the picture as we go forward, as the unitary is created. Parish councils in many cases own and maintain bus stops, and we need to make sure that they're able to do that. Some of the smaller parish councils, for example, might struggle financially to do that, and if that's the case, maybe we need to look at transferring assets there if they're not able to do that, because what we can't do is continue as we have done with a poor standard of bus shelter, or just where they've been vandalized to the point of, you know, being really unpleasant places to be. So we've got to fix that, and that's allied with the timetabling issue, which I've picked up and will raise with the bus companies again at my next meeting with them. You may also have seen that I think it's First have started doing some advertising for buses, for bus use, which is really good. So my first reaction when I was told some weeks ago that the government was going to end its COVID support for bus services in October my first reaction is, well, we've got to get the bus usage back up. The government did a brilliant job of telling everyone that buses were terrible, dangerous places to be during COVID, and everyone believed them and stopped using them. And we need to get them back out again. That's the challenge. And so we, separately from what the bus operators are doing, although in concert with that, are running about to begin our own marketing campaign at the county council. I've said, look, we've got to push to get people back on them. So we're going to do our own marketing campaign to try and get bus usage back up. And the more we can do, the sooner we can do that, then the less the impact of the cuts through non-viability will be. And I think that's really important. It doesn't ever really get done, does it? People don't push bus usage, and when you can't find out what the timetable is, that doesn't blooming well help. So I think all of those things work together, and it's going to need better focus than it's had for years. But I think we can do it. I think we can get the usage back up. Not all the way, I don't think. Certainly not by the autumn, because people's patterns of working have changed. We're doing this, aren't we, rather than meeting up in the council offices in Taunton and perhaps getting the bus in. More people are working at home, so there is an impact from that. So I think rather than just trying to encourage those that used to use the buses back on the buses, what we need to do is get more people, different people using the buses. And there's a campaign involved in that, and that's what we're now working on.
And in fact, I was involved in a meeting on that very subject today, and they're working towards a deadline of this Friday to try and get sign off on that, and one hopes that they'll manage it. Always lots of decision makers in councils. It's not easy, but it does look as if we're going to get to that, and all power to their elbow. David Northey.
Okay, thanks so much. First of all, I just want to say thanks to Mike for just sharing the future, and actually by sharing that, it means that we can do something about it. If we didn't know until the very last minute, that's really, I think, what's happened in the past. We've everything's been sort of cloak and dagger. So I think that's really, really powerful stuff, Mike, and at least we can begin to work on potential options on that. Going through some of the comments, I understand the challenge about express services. The Minehead route used to have an express bus service about 20 years ago. But of course, what we have to be very aware of is the market has changed, and understanding that new market after working on the railways for 42 years, and everything was about commuters and designing our whole rail network around commuters. Those commuters are not there in the same sort of number. So making sure that the bus service services that market that's there today and the market that's going to be there tomorrow in the future. College demand has been the biggest growth that we've seen on the railways. It's interesting, in Exeter College issued 16,000 scholar tickets to everybody across Devon to use rail services from as far as they come by bus from Ilfracombe to Barnstable, and I know we don't have an extensive rail system in Somerset, but it's possible to integrate these things together and look at that college demand. So I think, Mike, what you said about sort of having direct links to Richard Hewish, also to Bridgewater and Taunton College in Taunton, is critical, because that's where the new business is, rather than people going to work per se. Access to leisure and access to hospitals, I think, is really good. What's happened on the railways since privatisation, of course, rail partnerships were set up to promote underutilised branch lines, to make sure that they became more visible, more attractive, and subsequently all the branch lines in Devon and Cornwall and around Bristol have seen substantial growth from that marketing and selling something, selling a vision. I was in Chippenham the other day waiting to go to Devizes and realised, it struck me that unless you're a regular bus user, people don't know how to access buses. They don't know how to access trains and stuff. And this is the bit that probably, and I will have a look at the journey planner, because I've seen the advert in the Gazette and sort of skipped by it a few times. So I'll have a look at that. Certainly on the Minehead route, certainly I see at the station here, excessive overcrowding. and the whole bus interchange at Taunton station until the new road is a bit of a mess, really. So there could be some quick, simple wins by improving a little bit of signage at Taunton station to improve the bus facilities to Minehead. And then I was thinking, so rail partners, and of course then fares. It's sort of £4.60 to go from Priorswood to the centre of Taunton, compared to I could go for £5 from Saltash to Penzance on the bus or anywhere in Cornwall. And I know Cornwall have been really good at campaigning and getting money, and that's probably where we want Somerset to be like Cornwall, because they have managed to get so much additional funding for the bus network in Cornwall. So yeah, that's a few things on my list anyway. So.
Thanks to the EU funding. That
Yes, yeah.
I've got lots of hands up. Sue Stevens. You're on mute at the moment, Sue.
Try. Hi, last week I tried to get on the 25 bus at 9:30 and it didn't turn up. Now, we've been talking about trying to get patronage up and perhaps persuading people who haven't used buses much to move from their car onto buses. Now, this new Travel West site, or that you've been talking about, the Somerset County Council one, why can't it carry real-time information, some real-time information? I mean, you know, presumably the reason that the bus didn't come last week was because the bus driver may have had COVID, etc., etc. We don't know how this situation is going to pan out. It might be that there'll always be problems with staffing the buses, but at least if people knew what was happening on a real-time basis, it wouldn't be quite so bad. I mean, you know, somebody from at the council presumably could put in a message to all of on the say the 25 bus saying this one will not run, the next one will be such and such. You know, I mean, I think that's only fair if you have a travel site that it's actually current.
I'm not sure if there is a bus tracker on that travel site. I rather think there is, but I would need to double check on that.
Well, an upgraded bus tracker, so we know exactly, you know, you put in Wiveliscombe and it will say this bus isn't coming, or whatever.
Or you'd see where the bus is on the route, and certainly that's available on a First Bus app. I think it's available, but that's subject to confirmation on the travel planner of Somerset's as well.
But we have to make that travel planner perhaps central to it all. I mean, you know, I don't know about some of these other apps. You know, some people don't use apps. I'm not really very fond of them either. You know what I mean? But if we're going to encourage people to use that site, it has to have the most up-to-date, on a daily basis, information. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you.
Just to say there, Pete, that the application of first groups in differing parts of the country, you do have different data fed at specific timings, and when the division, in this instance, Somerset under the Southwest Division, do have that updated, it can be input, but it does lack it, I believe, in Somerset area, with Cornwall sometimes, unlike the west of England, Bristol, Bath and West. I'll just say that, okay?
Thanks, Jevon. Thank you. Mike Ginger.
It was just a quick point on the real-time information. The one I use mainly is the Travel Line Southwest app. I mean, you can use it on the computer and you can use it on your phone. And I think most of First Buses are being tracked by GPS. So what I'm finding is that I can be waiting at a bus stop and it will give me the timetabled time of arrival, but it'll also give me the expected time of arrival as well. So that's actually really useful if you're at a bus stop that has no timetable at all, or an out-of-date timetable. You can check it through Travel Line Southwest. So just in case people don't know about that, it's worth looking into.
As long as you have a mobile phone, and we do know that, of course, quite a lot of bus users don't. So, but I totally agree.
You can do it.
It's an asset.
You can do it online as well before you set off.
Dawn.
Yeah, I just want to put a plug in for Hatch Green buses, because they're my local bus operator, and they are just a fantastic service, and they always have their up-to-date timetables on their buses. They have the most wonderful drivers who assist a lot of elderly and infirm people. That, you know, I'm a real believer in some of these smaller companies, because the service they offer is superior. The other thing I was going to say, that we don't have bus timetables because most of the stops aren't sheltered, so there's nowhere to put a bus time up. I don't know what happens about that. The other concern of mine is that, you know, Hatch Green are a smaller company. Most of their passengers from our route are do have a bus pass, and I don't know what the implications are that of financially moving forwards, because a lot of youngsters can't afford the buses, so they don't use our bus. I don't know if anybody knows what the implication of a high proportion of bus pass users on a route is for its financial viability.
I mean, firstly, I would totally endorse your comment about some of the independent bus operators providing extremely good information and making sure that all the information is available up to date at bus stops in the north of the county where I am. There's an independent operator called Fairsaver, and they go to huge lengths to make sure that information is always correct at the bus stops. In terms of concessionary tickets, it's often the business model on which those bus operators are got used to. They've established their business based on concessionary tickets, so they would appear to be able to survive on that.
Peter, it's just to David Redford, just to say that most of those operators are actually council contracts. Mike lets the contracts for Hatch Green. So most Fairsavers contracts they're in Somerset, they're in the Froome area, as well as in Wiltshire, are also most of them are council contracts from Wiltshire. So their business model is tendering for council contracts. Dartline's the same. They are not commercial like First Group PLC. So although a lot of First Group PLC's West Country operation is actually tendered, to be honest, it's and it all goes down to the point I was going to make is, if you want to maintain buses in Somerset and the South West region as a whole, then you've got to persuade Rishi Sunak or the candidates that effectively there's trust that the buses are important, that trains are important, and that this bus operator grant should continue. Because if it doesn't, as Mike Rigby said, we will be doing a round of cuts across the South West region, with probably the exception being Cornwall, because it's a special devolution area, as David Northey will tell you, where it's getting special money for local trains and local buses, but all the others will be looking to make cuts. So let's hope, and we've got an MP, I know she's no longer inside the cabinet, I understand, but let's hope the local MPs all rally round and put pressure on, because the next battle for buses, trains, coaches, the rest of it, is actually with the government. And the reason you haven't got some buses turning up, I'm afraid to say, we have a nationwide shortage of bus drivers, and also in some cases a nationwide shortage, you wouldn't believe it, of some train drivers as well.
Thanks, David. I totally agree. In Boris, for all his many, many faults, he was an enthusiast for buses. John Ainsworth.
I mean, from what I'm hearing from a number of people in Wellington is that what puts them off, or one of the things that people puts them off, is the cost of travel. A return from Wellington to Taunton is £7.80 at the moment. If you've got a couple, then that's £15. if you've got a family, there is a family ticket. I know you can get an all-day family ticket, but it's still quite expensive. So I know the council probably can't do anything about that, but can the bus companies be encouraged to do that? And of course, I'm hearing that about North Somerset. I think it was today North Somerset had free travel on their buses all day. Was it today?
Yeah.
And that's a way, perhaps, of at least encouraging people to get on the bus and just try it out. And provided when they get on them, they're reliable.
Susanna Clements.
Hi, yeah, a couple of suggestions. First, it's great if the county council are doing another app. It'd be really good to have a map, and it'd be really good if that could be reproducible on paper, because people can then look at it and sort of think about how to get to places. I said before yesterday that I did a sort of sketch map of the bus routes from Glastonbury in one of our newsletters, and it's been really enthusiastically used especially by visitors. And it gives you a chance. I mean, you might not know when the buses are coming, but at least you can see that it's a possibility to get from A to Z or whatever. The other thing I want to suggest is, this is a big idea really, but probably couldn't be taken up straight away. But I think that, thinking of the times I've given up having a car, if it was possible, I mean, I'd be prepared to pay quite a substantial amount. I've got a free bus pass now, which is brilliant, but a year for an annual bus pass, because if you think what it costs to keep a car on the road, if it was possible to have like a bus pass that was combined with like emergency car hire, where there were like car sharing or car whatever, for the times where you just couldn't get a bus, so that you could manage without a car. A lot of people would really like to give up their cars. I've heard that from so many people. So just to think it through, think what would you need? And once you've paid up front for all your travel, and especially if that's done for the whole, all the residents in a household, then, you're going to use it. You're going to really get on those buses. It makes such a difference for me, having an old age bus pass, that, I use buses all the time now, because it's just, once you've got it, you just use it.
Thanks, Susanna. Just to divert for 1 second, if you haven't put your email address and your location on the chat, it would be really helpful if you could do that. Also, as we'd like to form a Taunton bus user group, and we're not talking very much about bus user groups, we're talking about all the issues that bus user groups should be talking about. Could you just say on the chat whether you would join a Taunton bus user group, so that we can organise a further meeting, and ideally have an event in Taunton during the September bus month. In September, there is going to be a national bus month. It's something I'm very pleased to say that Mike Rigby has said that Somerset County Council, as well as running their own campaign, will also be backing the Somerset Catch the Bus month. We've got a lot of interest from some of the media, the radio station as well. So we do need, on the 3rd of September, to hold an event actually in Taunton. And to hold an event, we need some willing help and some helpers on the ground for that event. So if you think not only could you join the bus user group in Taunton, but that you might be available to help man a stall on the 3rd of September, Saturday the 3rd of September, if you could put that in the chat as well, that would be really very helpful indeed. Actually, we're getting more people joining the meeting. Martin Davis, we've not heard from you before, you've had your hand up, and then we'll come to Dee Charles, who's been really very patient to say something. But Martin, go ahead, please. You're muted.
Hello there. Can you hear me now?
Perfectly well. Yeah.
I've got a couple of points I'd like to raise. I mean, I will be honest, I'm not local to Taunton. I don't really know much about the individual services in Taunton, but there's a couple of sort of things, that one sort of trend I've noticed across the country, and not just with buses but with coaches as well. We were sort of, obviously no one wanted the pandemic to happen. It was totally out of the blue. But I've noticed I've been aware of instances around the country of services that got reduced or stopped in March 2020 at the start of the lockdown, and then they've not been reinstated as. I don't know if that's happened to any services within the Somerset area, but I am aware of that happening, and then it's never gone back to its pre-March 2020 time to what was offered pre-March 2020. So my feeling about that is, why would things like that be happening? If because I mean, it's fully understandable, the restrictions, COVID did impact on demand for travel, but I sort of feel in a couple of instances that's led to services being cut further and ultimately being withdrawn. So is there any reason why maybe passengers got led to believe a service would return following the easing of restrictions and it never did?
Well, patronage has stayed some 30% below what it was pre-COVID, so there has been a readjustment.
I do understand. So thanks for saying. Another point about the driver training, about shortage of drivers. Has there been sort of consideration to maybe, doing more driver recruitment events, maybe like in local colleges, local universities, things like that, sort of maybe places where there might be, I mean, I don't know, but maybe, I don't know sort of what age you need to be to drive a bus now, but maybe if you recruited somewhere where if you sort of had a recruitment drive somewhere where there's lots of students, maybe you'd sign people up that way, maybe a bit of part-time work, maybe that's a sort of, maybe if bus driving as a career was sort of promoted well, it could really take off, and you could get the workforce that you need.
Thank you very much. I think the bus operators would tell you that they've tried every which way to recruit drivers, but it doesn't mean that there might be other opportunities, and possibly getting vacation or weekend drivers from colleges is another option. So I'll go to Lee, and Mike Rigby has very patiently waited to, I'm sure, want to answer a number of the issues raised, but Dee, if you go next.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question, really. I'm not sure if we can answer it in the group. Has any extra provision been made over the summer for passengers travelling to Butlins? One of our parishioners said she was in Taunton on a Sunday and she couldn't get the 28 coming back because so many families were there with littlies and suitcases, and even so the bus left full. There were still many families waiting. And I think originally, or at least some time ago, a double-decker used to be used. Obviously, times have changed. Buses have gone up and road surfaces have gone up and railway bridges haven't gone up to match them. But I wondered if this summer any extra provision has been made. I know they run every half an hour, but when you have littlies and it's either raining or hot, which invariably is one or the other, can be quite hard waiting for the next bus.
So can I just come in there, Peter? So
yeah.
Up until probably the early 1990s, Southern National as it was, or Western National probably as it was then, would run on summer Saturdays direct buses from the railway station to Butlins, so it alleviated any of the congestion that you would have found on the local bus network. That gradually tailed away, and that used to be double deckers, and we had low deckers here in Taunton that enabled to get under the bridges at Coombe and the one at Willerton. So that was possible, that could happen. Something somewhere decided that it wasn't worth connecting with trains or wasn't valid, and the bus service was still quite low at that stage, and gradually when it transferred to half hourly, it felt probably that would cope. But the problem is, I've seen at Taunton only in the last holiday, there must have been about 50 to 60 people waiting at the railway station, snaked all the way along the pavement. They definitely weren't going to get on the next bus. They're going to have to wait for the one after that. And then once they're on, of course, it provides congestion all the way through to Minehead if they filled the bus up. So there's definitely something, and that could be something working with Butlins because it's in their interest, and maybe they could be up for funding some dedicated buses. Might know something on that, but that might be one way of trying to, because you know when the changeover is, everybody leaves by 10 o'clock. So if you had a bus or a set fleet of buses at that time, and you know the general arrival times that can link around trains, it could be work to help to alleviate that. And I think Butlins would be the people that sort of may need to sort of help fund something like that.
Thank you, David. Mike, over to you.
Thank you. I'll just run through some of those points, and then I've got a few other things of my own to raise. I've raised the issue of Butlins congestion with our bus team today. My understanding is, although I'm waiting for final confirmation on this, that once the new road is built behind the new GWR multi-storey car park at the railway station, the 28 bus will be able to do roughly what it used to do before, picking up people at the railway station, running behind the car park and coming out on Trenchard Way at the soon-to-be built junction. Now, that junction was supposed to have been built, I think it was about three to 4 years ago. It was supposed to be very soon after Trenchard Way, and it's never happened for a variety of reasons. So it was scheduled in to start in August this year. Now, don't shoot me, but I called a halt to that because we had a load of other stuff going on in Taunton, lots more traffic signal replacement work, and there was a risk, in my view, that we would have ended up with a situation similar to that which occurred in May last year, when the county council just did a load of work all over Taunton and ground the place to a halt. Well, I'm not having that anymore. So I postponed that by a month or so until the rest of the work is out of the way. But it should still nevertheless be complete at the back end of this year. And my understanding is that the 28 bus will be able to go back up to the railway station rather than everyone having to trek down and stand under the horrible old bridge and then effectively block the footway. So that whole issue of congestion and what we can do, because the buses, can't cope with the number of people, is under consideration. There is bus tracking. I think we've touched on that point. There's several apps. There's bustimes.org. There's the First Bus app that my son briefly came down and showed me that he uses to track the locations of buses. So, even if you're stood at a bus stop, quite often we had a situation where the pair of us were going to watch the football a few months ago, and the bus didn't turn up on time, and we could see that the next one was outside Tropiquaria, so we kind of gave up and drove into town instead. But those tracking devices are quite good, but it does speak to a wider issue about reliability that I'll raise with the bus operators. The price of fuel at the moment is obviously enormous. It's starting to float back down again slowly, never as quickly as it goes up, but even so, it roughly speaking costs me, we've got one electric car and one old petrol car, and if I drive the petrol car to Taunton, it costs me £3.60 in petrol alone, without taking into account all the other costs of motoring. So lots of people will be feeling the pinch in terms of driving their own vehicles. So it does become all of a sudden more favourable to take the bus in. It's obviously a return for me into Taunton is more than £3.60, but it's not a vast amount more. It's £5 and something. So it suddenly becomes more economic, and that's something that we're going to try and push through the marketing campaign this summer. We have as a manifesto commitment, I'm going to try and get it implemented by September 2023, the Libertine card. So that's a bus discount card. We haven't decided on what the level of discount is or the age group yet, but our team is working on that. And the thinking is that young people are a disadvantaged group at the best of times, and we need to try and maximise their opportunities to attend education, entertainment, employment, all of these things. And so it helps in its own right. But what it also does, I hope, or what it will do, is in the same way that the over 65s pass provides a kind of base load of usage that can be built on commercially. You've got another base load of usage with younger people, which will help to make these, make it more attractive. We'll get more people on the buses, and the routes will, to a degree, be protected by having that additional usage. So that I'm hoping to have up and running by September 2023. And then obviously just on the BSIP front, we've put in our final detailed bid some time ago. I had a meeting with the minister, although I've been unable to discover whether she remains the minister. I kind of hope she has. It was Baroness Veer, and I thought she was pretty good, to be honest. She seemed to have a good grasp of her brief and showed some flexibility as well in the discussions that we had. So I'm hoping that she's still there, and that we can get an announcement on that in the not too distant future. But of course, with BSIP, one of the issues that one of the proposals in that is that we cap for a period of 3 years single fares in Taunton at £1. So that business about having to pay £4.60 to go backwards and forwards from Priorswood to the centre will come to an end. Now, it is time limited, it is 3 years, but the hope is that by doing this, we transform bus use in and around Taunton, and in doing so, achieve something in its own end, but also set out what can be done elsewhere. So we use that as an exemplar and then roll that out in other parts of Somerset. We're going to need government funding for that, but if we can show that it works in one place, we've got a pretty good chance of getting that. And then finally, on the Butlins issue, I had a meeting with the West Somerset Railway a couple of weeks ago. And I think there's a fairly reasonable prospect that in the not too distant future, we'll have mainline trains running to Bishop's Lydeard. I think the idea of anything other than the heritage stuff going from Lydeard to Minehead is some way off in the distance. But in the not too distant future, if we can get, for example, the Cardiff, the Swindon, some of the Bristol services that currently terminate at Taunton to instead terminate at Bishop's Lydeard, I think you could do something clever with through ticketing there involving Butlins, and it doesn't really matter, frankly, if you're going on holiday, if the last bit of your journey is at 25 miles an hour. It's a bit slow for a train journey, but frankly it's not much slower than the bus, and it's a bit more interesting. So I'm hoping that we can get that up and running in the next 2 years as well.
Thanks, Mike. David Redgewell.
I just wanted to pick up the coach issue because Mike didn't join us. Mike, I've had a conversation with Chris, the MD of National Express. Very keen to pick up the Taunton bus station issue with you and his team. Certainly keen to go back in there, and they're certainly keen to reinvent the point that the team was making. We lost National Express in Taunton. It was a regional hub at one point where if you came from Plymouth or Penzance, and you were on your way north to Birmingham or even Scotland, because if you're a Scottish bus at 6:30, then you connected there for Ilfracombe and Minehead, Ilfracombe and Barnstable. And believe it or not, those buses ran very late. Barnstable at, I think it was some ridiculous time at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, Peter. The National Express to Ilfracombe at 1 a.m. arrivals and things. They weren't so long ago. That's the stuff Martin was talking about pre-COVID. We want to get National Express back to being a hub again in Taunton, along with, of course, we've only got the only 24-hour bus service across the southwest from Plymouth to Bristol that goes through Taunton. But of course, we need to sort the facilities out at Riverside so that Stagecoach, Megabus and Falcon have better facilities for the public. But getting that bus station back, and Baroness Veer still is the minister, and I'm sure we can persuade her to come on board with Taunton bus station. After all, it's really good news after 3.5 years of campaigning, and I think Brian's not on this call, but people in Travel Watch, I know Peter and others, we've now finally got the coach facilities open in Exeter. So it does work. If you keep pushing away, you do get the government money, and you do get the government support. So on the bus stations, I just wanted to say, but please, whilst we're talking about having the bus catch the bus week, some of the people on this call are close to the Devon border, and we should really be getting Councillor Andrew Davis, the member that lives in Lynmouth, who's chair of the South West Peninsula Transport Board, and also Devon's council, public transport. And she's a great enthusiast for public transport, Peter. So we should be engaging with her to try and get some Catch the Bus campaign stuff's going in Devon, but equally she of course pays for tendered services across the border into Linton and Lynmouth, and of course she pays towards the Tiverton buses and the Axminster buses. So we need that relationship with Devon. If you're in Taunton, it's very important. But not just does Taunton need better bus facilities. I watched this lovely film made by a bus and trains guy, which Mark Morgan Hughes, and I don't know who's surviving. We'll know more at the board tomorrow at first. There's a lot of directors going at first. Is probably what people don't know is there's a huge reorganisation going on affecting Somerset. We don't even know where the headquarters of First in Somerset will be, whether it'll be in Bristol or be in Southampton. It's in Southampton at the moment. That's a board decision. But the point I really wanted to make is Minehead needs better waiting facilities at the railway station. There is no shelters there. There's all these new bus services, open toppers, town services. The town Bank Street, where I've waited in my wheelchair and got soaked from a few shelters. So it's towns like Minehead where we also need to get bus facilities sorted out, as well as, of course, in Wellington when we open the new railway station. So let's hope if we're at Wellington Station that we get good bus interchanges, because the bus rail interchanges are very important. And I agree with Mike, one of the answers to the West Somerset issue is that railway. It's owned by the county council. It should stay with the county council, by the way. It should not be sold to any private rail company.
Don't worry.
And then, Mike, we can use it for the benefit of the community, because it's a really big asset. And I agree with you, bringing the local trains in and then connecting with carriages and taking people, that will help. And allow the 28 bus to be used by local people. But the only other thing I want to say, Peter, was we really do need some better bus timetables. I was sent a nice copy of the Somerset buses timetable today. Mike, it's got a lovely map in it, my first group, except when you look for half the timetables, they don't exist. So they've got, Peter, they've got some lovely maps of your area where you are, but they don't actually show the timetables for the 376 into Bristol from Street, or the 20 into Weston-super-Mare from Taunton. It takes you to Burnham, but there's a collection of very good bus service into Weston, actually from Taunton, if you want to use it. So I recommend it, day out on that. But no information, just a map. So we need to get older first and say, look, if you're going to produce a bus timetable for Somerset, it's got to be corporate. It's got to cover the whole of the county of Somerset and not bits of the county of Somerset. But there is a timetable. Hopefully the October version will be an awful lot better than the thing we've got now. I think those are my points. But coaches, please don't forget them. They're very important. I'm sure David, Northey would say they are as well. And I wish you well eventually with the bus interchange with the railways, because I think we got 3 hubs, Peter. We identified those in the room that weren't with us the other night. Just to tell you, we identified 3 hubs, and I think Mike agrees. Sorry, you don't, Mike, but one is the railway station. The second is reopening the existing bus station as a bus and coach. Mike, cycle interchange for your bikes, your e-scooters, all those facilities, changing places, cafe, toilets. And then the other one is to try and sort out the motorway facility for the coaches to drop in, drop out, and also those coaches also drop into Wellington. They're very important to Somerset's economy.
Thanks, David. Thank you very much. I mean, on bus timetables, I think town councils need to give thought to producing a town-based timetable showing the routes. Certainly working in Frome on our bus stalls in the centre of Frome, it always surprised me how, though regular bus users might know their particular bus route, but often didn't know all the other bus routes which are emanating out of that town. And I'm sure that's the case with all the market towns. Having a bus timetable for all of Somerset is an attractive thing, but it'd be much better to have large numbers of town bus timetables, which are then door dropped to every house in the town. It's about getting information out into people's homes, and parish councils, and this is something we've done in my own village. We produce a bus timetable, costs us £150 each time we print it. It has all the buses that go through our village, times they leave, the times they come back to the village, and we door drop that. The parish councillors go out and door drop it to every house. And there's no reason at a cost of only £150 why every parish council in Somerset shouldn't do something likewise. And that would address the issue of having accurate and up-to-date information for bus users. So that's my pitch again on bus timetables, such an important aspect of getting more people going on by bus and recruiting new people to buses. Ian, you've been very patient. Over to you, Ian. You're on.
Thank you. I was very pleased to hear what Mike Rigby has had to say about the improvement to the interchange with the number 28 at Taunton bus rail station, because I think he's aware at the moment that if you are getting a bus to West Somerset from the railway station, you literally are on a pavement that is so narrow. You have got a shelter, but if you're there with a suitcase, people walking along the pavement can't get past you. It's one of the most appalling bus interchanges that anyone could wish to use to advertise facilities of a county town. So I'm pleased to hear that something is happening about that. Also pleased to hear that there is an attempt to get national rail services into Bishop's Lydeard. The plea is, please make it affordable to actually use the service up on the West Somerset Railway part. The reason why I say that is that I often make a journey from Taunton to Braintree in Essex, where my daughter lives. And I can sometimes, with my 30% discount pass, get a ticket for under £20 right from Taunton to Braintree, including the underground. Then, if there is something like a £10 cost to get up to Taunton or Bishop's Lydeard, it really, it's just, you look at it and you go, no, not doing that. It's this disproportionality that needs to be sorted out, I think, in order to help. I am very pleased that there is no talk of commuter services on the West Somerset Railway. It is a total, in my opinion, total non-starter. The bus is the answer for services for regular travellers. But the occasional, but the kind of link in to the National Rail Network, which will allow people in Minehead, Watchet, Williton, and a few other places to actually access by getting onto a train in this region, or in this district, shall I say, or former district, without having to first get to a bus and then sit on the bus and then go across and do an interchange, however easy it is a very attractive thing for getting people to actually use the rail network. So there's that plea. And the other thing, of course, is please, you know, a flight into Heathrow at 5:30 touchdown, and you cannot get to Williton that night. You can get to Taunton, but you cannot get a bus once you get to Taunton down, because the last bus is 8:15 in the evening. Now that's, you might say, not too bad, but there are a lot of other people that would like a later bus, and I think again this would help to encourage more people to use buses. And hopefully, if the kind of discount scheme for young people, we can't get young people to stay in the West Somerset area in key jobs such as nursing, because they cannot go up to Taunton for a bit more life and get back without using a taxi. And the last time I heard, the taxi fare from Taunton to Minehead is in excess of 50 quid. So even between three people, that's, you know, quite expensive for a night out. But I'll leave it there, and I know we'll be doing our best. And there is some heartening news. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you, Ian. Mike Rigby.
Thank you. And that's the point, Ian, I was making about through ticketing. There needs to be some clever arrangements. And, you know, it's not that difficult for the train operating company, for the West Somerset Railway and for Butlins to put their heads together and to come up with an affordable ticket price. I mean, I used the West Somerset Railway 3 weeks ago. My brother came down with his kids and I took my 3 kids on the railway, and it cost me, you know, the 4 of us 70 quid to get to Minehead and back. So there's quite a lot of money, and it's probably not, frankly, attractive as a prospect for commuting to Butlins. But as I say, I'm sure that the 3 entities together between them can come up with something that is attractive and that frankly is a bit more comfortable than having to wait for a long period of time for a bus that may well be full. So that's certainly something that I think, as this plan progresses, that I'll make sure that they all work together on.
Thanks, Mike. We've been going an hour and a half. We've got most of the people still with us, but people are beginning to disappear off. So we'll go to Martin and then to Ian. Martin.
Sorry, just before that,
Yep.
Peter, I do have to disappear now, I'm afraid. So if anyone's got anything terribly urgent to ask me, perhaps they could, and then I'll disappear after that.
Before you do disappear, could I just thank you, Mike, for coming and facing the audience. Mike Hewitson did that down in Yeovil. You've done it here. I think it's really impressive, not wishing to draw comparisons, but we didn't used to see that from the previous administration. These are difficult times for anybody connected with buses, and it's been really useful to have you here tonight. I do know that the people in Wells are very, very keen to talk to you. I know you've been invited to the meeting of their city council tomorrow, but that might not be possible at short notice, but they do want to talk to you and find out what can be done to help their situation. But from what you said, things are underway to explore it. It was unfortunate, the early announcement on the curtailment, possible curtailment of the 173, but many thanks for joining us tonight, Mike.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Can I raise the issue of, Mike, in the north of the county, I think they exist where Peter lives, we've got the Avon Rider group, and we've got the Western Rider, I can't remember right now, the Bristol Rider, and that's right, Bristol Rider, Western Rider, and Bath Rider. We don't have a ticket in Somerset that covers all the bus services in the county, which would be good. We have one, by the way, by First Group, where I could travel from Lynmouth right the way through to Thornbury on their buses, but I can't use anybody else's buses. And David Northey made a point, in Cornwall, there's Ride Cornwall and there's the Freedom Pass, which are both valid on buses in Cornwall and First Group trains and First Group buses and what they call it, Transport for Cornwall. We need similar things in Somerset. Maybe the Somerset tickets are also with the North, maybe they're also with the Unitary, because that might make economy of scale to make them viable. But if you are meeting Dan Norris to discuss some of these cross-border, and Steve Bridges, the North Somerset leader on cross-border Somerset services, then these issues of ticketing and freedom passes and all could be on the agenda, because obviously Mendip and a bus network is still integrated with North Somerset and with Baines and Wecker, just like Yeovil's network is so integrated with Dorset. But those are my just points I wanted to make. Thanks.
Very good points as always, David. Much appreciated. Thank you. I've made
Thanks,
a note.
Mike. If you have to go, thank you very much for joining us. Martin.
Yes, it was just an observation. I stayed in Saltash at the weekend. To get from Saltash to Loo, there was a very frequent bus service, which with bus pass was for me free. But I took a rail ticket to Liscard and down on the Valley line to Loo, and the total cost for the return journey was £4, which I think is remarkable.
Yeah.
And we haven't got anything similar up here. And that's a heritage line, even though it's not heritage trains.
And I think that says something about Cornwall and Somerset and Somerset's relationship with public transport and the belief in public transport. And because it's the same in rail fares, the rail fares in Somerset, for instance, from Taunton to Tiverton Parkway, which is less than Tiverton Parkway to Exeter, is 3 times as much.
It's ridiculous.
And there's definitely a border issue between Somerset and Devon, certainly on rail. May not be the same on buses, but that border does sort of sometimes get in the way and sort of cause issues. And I think, sort of, as I said before, Cornwall have been previously were the only part of England, I think, that had EU grants because of its status. Have been really good at campaigning for public transport and getting more money. They've definitely had a voice in London, and that could be something that this group does, to get all the MPs together for Somerset and actually hold them to account and get them to do the work that they should be doing for us as bus users and people that have voted, that actually they need to make the noise. And if they don't make the noise, then other people make the noise, and therefore Somerset loses out. So Cornwall have certainly made far more noise than anybody else, and Somerset have just up to now, and hopefully we will see a change with the new administration.
I'd just like to add to that, if you go to Tiverton Parkway, the bus service into Tiverton itself is appalling.
Oh yes, yeah, it doesn't meet the trains.
No. Absolutely.
It's not designed. It's designed to link Uffculme to Tiverton, and just happens to go via the railway station.
Okay, we'll take 2 more comments, and then I think at what will be close to 9:15, we'll draw it to an end. Martin Davis.
Hello again. I hope you don't mind me asking another question.
Sure, please.
Something that came up something that I thought about, while the meeting's been ongoing. I know it's been suggested that maybe community transport could act as or on-demand travel could act as like a replacement for bus services in their current formats. I don't know much about community transport provision. I will be honest. I probably should know more. But I mean, I used to have some friends who they live in the Wells area, and every time I used to meet up with them, they used to moan about a service that I think it might have been Wells to Wookey or something. I think it was like one Webber bus provided, and then when it got taken on by Mendip Community Transport, they used to sort of moan all the time. Every time that I met them, they used to moan about how it was a bad bus service and that people got left behind. So if you did look at like making more use of community transport in place of bus services in their current formats, how would you sort of be able to be confident that the supply would be able to meet demands? And also as well, my understanding is community transport providers, you get a lot of volunteer drivers in them. So could that sort of potentially lead to, if you just get volunteer drivers with no contract, could that potentially lead to services being cancelled at like short notice if the drivers running them don't turn up?
I'm just to put the counterpoint of view. I've had conversations with councillors in St Cuthbert's Outer, which is the parish council which surrounds Wells, and they talk very highly of the community transport, largely because they haven't got any alternative, but they are very dependent on it. There's obviously going to be a limit on how many people can get on one of those minibuses.
Sorry, all the drivers, I was involved in community transport, all the drivers that they're running a number of contracts, including the famous 67, which helped set up as Wales to Wedmore and Highbridge, and the park and ride down at Glastonbury, and a number of other services. All those drivers are paid, they're paid staff. So that's fine. As a union man, I wouldn't have had it any other way, but we took some first group drivers. They were happy to do those local services. So Martin, certainly the ones in Somerset are rather like some of the ones in South Gloucestershire, where the staff are paid. It's not all run by volunteers. Some of it might be.
So much. I wasn't like trying to make assumptions. I was just going on like, I've just sort of, this is what somebody's told me before. Yeah. So I wasn't trying to be critical or anything. I promise.
No, and community transport or demand responsive transport is seen to be a very important solution to rural transport in many parts. So it's worth raising the question mark. Sue Stevens.
Hi, I just want to ask about Wellington Station. I'm a bit confused as to how Wellington Station fits in with Taunton Station, because to my mind, Wellington isn't very far from Taunton. I mean, is it going to be is it going to take completely different passengers? Is it going to go a completely different route? Is it going to take, I don't know, because there was at one point a bit of dispute because some of the trains were not stopping further along the route towards London at one time, that they were going to pass straight through. Is this all part and parcel of this you know, having another rail station? Because it can't be a park and ride because there's no room there. What passengers are they expecting to take? Wouldn't they be better to go in to Taunton by bus and catch the train? Can somebody help me out here? Because yeah.
David, perhaps you might be able to. I think we've lost John Ainsworth, unfortunately, but perhaps you could comment.
So I was the strategic planner involved in the business case for Wellington.
Oh, so that's your fault, right?
Yeah. No, well, Wellington and Cullompton are the two stations that are linked together in reopening this corridor, and it's much bigger than just going from Wellington to Taunton. It's the whole corridor between Exeter, Cullompton, Taunton, Bridgewater, and on to Bristol. Certainly from the business case and the congestion on the A38 trying to get into Taunton to get to the station is part of the driver. With the new works that are going on at Comitro, that's only going to add to it. So the station is about taking people much further than Taunton. Certainly access to places like Bridgewater College. You could do a journey from Wellington to Taunton in less than 17 minutes, to Bridgewater. So it starts to open up lots of more journeys that are not currently made by rail. Certainly going the other way towards Exeter, people don't drive to Tiverton Parkway. Generally, once they started going, they would drive all the way to Exeter. So it's got a much broader aspect than just trying to link Taunton and Wellington together. It links up the whole corridor between Bristol and Exeter and the rest of the southwest. On average, I think sort of the business case was working out something like about 250 odd thousand passengers per year would use Wellington to start with that growing to over 400,000 within 10 years of the station reopening. So there was a significant demand for it, not generally attracting from rail, from bus, but from road users. So alleviating even better the congestion on the A38, making bus journey into Taunton even better. So.
Right, so it's mostly going to be people from around the Wellington area.
Yes, well, when you think of all the houses that Wellington have had and where the majority of work, not necessarily in Taunton, people are travelling through to Bridgewater for work. That's where a lot of work's going on now, and up towards Bristol, and going the other way to Exeter. And Taunton would be probably seen as an interchange between services to London and on. And it would also complement the bus network by freeing up spaces on the road network into Taunton, alleviating some of the traffic demand on that A38.
Thank you. Thank you. John, did you want to add something? John Hassel?
Yes, I was just going to say that I've been to Tiverton a few times by train recently, as someone mentioned Tiverton, and not every train stops there. They have a fast and a semi-fast, and the same would happen between Wellington and Cullompton, I would imagine. It's part of the Devon network.
Yeah, well, the train service has already started with the extending of the Cardiff to Taunton services through to Exeter and Penzance. So the services are already running through Wellington and Clumpton in preparation. So you'll get an hourly service at Wellington, and then the new service will start from somewhere like Exmouth and will come to Taunton, to mean that Wellington and Clumpton will get, along with Tiverton Parkway, a half-hourly service linking into that whole sort of Devon Metro concept, which the name of it is changing to become Devon and Somerset Metro. So brings in Somerset to be an important part of it, and widens the scope, because you could then extend that Taunton service through to Westbury and serve new stations at Langport, give better access to Castle Carey, Bruton and Frome, for instance. So,
Martin,
Thank you.
Martin, did you want to say something on buses? Your hands up or not?
No, I should have taken my hand down.
Okay, it's a legacy hand.
It's a legacy.
I think it's now 9:10, so unless somebody has something really urgent and important to say, I hope you found this meeting useful. We've, I think, had the real benefit of having Mike Rigby join us. Okay, he's now left, but he's been with us throughout most of the meeting. Clearly, he's got a huge challenge with the role he's got. He's come in at a most difficult time for buses across the country, but not least down here in Somerset. And the fact that he's prepared to engage with us in the way that he has this evening is good news. So thank you all for joining. I've certainly found it a really useful meeting. I hope you have as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
For you from Marcus.
Thanks.
Council, by the way. Okay.
Thank you.
thanks, Peter. Thank you all.
Thanks. Have you saved the chat? Yeah.